Wait for the blood!
The blood is mine. Get out of here. Give me the blood, Lord! And let me get away!
Get out of here, devil! Out, devil! Out, sin! Do you accept the church of the third revelation as your spiritual guide? Get out of here! Get out of here! Get out of this! We're bound with you! Lord!
There is indeed power in the blood. But one can't deny the cost of such unforgivable acts. The sins of spamming spinning slash and endure. The unpardonable use of the heretical arcane. What would drive a person to use such a build? What would possess a human to put its very soul at hazard by opening their eyes to the forbidden occult? Well, mostly because bleed builds are fun. This build is a 22 dexterity build with most of the stats dumped into arcane. Be careful with arcane, only those who are most devoted to the grotesque secrets of the blood will be rewarded with the damage and status to make their build complete. Morgott Curved Sword builds and Bleed Colossal Sword builds are viable and used by top players, but I found that pushing the arcane a little bit gives you better results because of the higher damage and higher buildup on your infused weapons, while having a variety of weapons perform well. Anything less than 40 arcane, and you might not be digging deep enough into the tomes of the other side. Gamers can roll status procs. Gamers can bolus. Having good damage on top of nasty status keeps your build competitive against more prepared opponents. I think the 22 dex option for Godskin Peeler, Nagakiba, and Anspur, or a build that tops at 24 strength for Mogwin Spear and Murray Executioner Sword are best for arcane. Both builds will give you weapon flexibility while giving you a smattering of potential options. Arcane builds can be difficult to hone correctly. Because of the diversity in Ash of War and affinities, sometimes the choice between bleed and occult will not be that clear. Often the rule is to occult infuse weapons that already have bleed buildup because you get better damage and additional bleed that way, and in the case of the weapons that don't have native bleed buildup, bleed infuse them in order to harvest the blood that you require. This is a good rule of thumb, but don't be afraid to experiment. Sometimes a bleed scythe can be much more effective than an occult scythe depending on your opponent's setup and connection. Arcane may be the optimal build on high latency. Phantom hits on rolls build up status, so with status counting in the right weapons, you can hang with all but the most egregious high ping. This might affect your build choice too. In general, because of the lower connection quality and easy anti-cheat added latency on PC, having ample status options can be an excellent way to design an invader to prepare for that unfun latency lottery. And while bleed builds don't occupy the top of the invasion metagame that is held exclusively by dexterity at the moment, the depth and innovative ways you can build your character make the arcane an intriguing subject to dabble in. This build is centered around an unsheathed Nagakiba in my main hand, with various offhand weapons that I use if I'm not power stancing katanas. Offhand Ash of War on my power stance cats? Spinning slash, of course. I have to tell you that I despise this Ash of War. Its true combo nature is absolutely broken in a bad way, and I would be caught a light rolling mage before I'd be caught using spinning slash in a 1v1. I think an arcane invading build is an exceptional place to use it, however. One thing about arcane is that, aside from Mogwin, you don't have access to some of the other top tier AoEs that other builds get. I've talked about most of these in my other videos. Waves of Darkness for Int, Golden Lander Goldbreaker for Faith, Stormhawk Axe for Dex, and Flaming Strike and various other stamp and earth-shaking Ash of Wars for Strength. Arcane has more limited options for native scaling damage Ash of Wars than other stats do. Having native scaling Ash of Wars is extremely powerful on any build. As we all know, Elden Ring PvP is all about spamming L2 as fast, as often, and as ferociously as possible in every single situation. Getting paid off for your stat investments in Ash of War damage is highly encouraged in this game. So, because we don't have some of these valuable AoEs, or at least not in high damage forms, we use Spinning Slash. Adding our high status build-up to the true combo nature of the Ash of War results in very quick kills. As you may know, Spinning Slash on Nagakiba is particularly unfair because it has the fastest Spinning Slash animation with an insane amount of range. You don't get infinite hyper armor, so try and time this correctly, but to be frank, you can just spam this in someone's face if they are using anything smaller than a great sword. This isn't my favorite thing to use, but as a gank spank, it's near the top of the heap. The other competitive option for an Ash of War AoE attack with hyper armor that I have found for Arcane is Bloody Slash. It's not just a tool for noobs in Limgrave, my friends. While you have to be careful not to kill yourself with this thing, Bloody Slash is really powerful. Putting it on a weapon with a lot of range, like, say, the Dismounter, gives you access to an interesting combination of high damage one-shot with the bleed proc and a solid roll catch mix-up. I can't roll this thing either, so if you get hit by it, no worries. You can also do tricky things with this, like skip your Crimson Tear, and because Dismounter is a great invasion weapon already, this is a nasty combination. The 22 dex gives us access to Anspur Rapier for hosts who keep running away, of course. And as always, fast weapons with great movesets like the Shamshir perform very well on a status build, especially if you are good at status counting and predict being able to combo off of the bleed proc. We have a Bloody Helice swap, which is a great finisher and gives you a bunch of iframes to crutch on. And no Arcane build would be complete without some Occult Starfists. They get solid damage on Occult, and the bleed buildup is nothing to scoff at either, as it builds up on each hit. So do it like this. Spam Endure, spam R1, and smack someone right out of Waterfowl Dance. I've got other more fun things on the build, like this Poison Mist Occult Butchering Knife. Combining Mist Ash of Wars with weapons that have good scaling on your main stat is an effective way to add status on top of good damage. Every Arcane build should have some Scythes. They have excellent Occult and Bleed affinities, depending on if you're looking for damage or status. They also combine well with various offhand weapons, and are premium for implementing the handy tech. I even tried these claws for an invasion or two. I have to say, they are a truly disgusting setup. Endure Raptor Talons are possibly the most broken feeling thing in the game right now, and truly, I feel pity for those hosts who are so easily dispatched and degraded with such an unfair thing. But out of all of the cheesy things on this build, out of all of the despicable acts of evil that I committed while invading with this monstrosity, out of all of the regrets that I have after invading with the bleed build, the Powerstanced Occult Naginatas are the ones I found to be the most filthy. I haven't used Powerstanced Spears much, more than some, but certainly not as much as others. And truthfully, a big part of that is that it's so boring and easy. Out of everything gross and oh my god, meta on this build, this is the thing that I want to scream at From Software about the loudest. The animation blending might be tough to fix. Why do these things always seem to hit early? But everyone, sound off on Power Stance damage. I don't care if it was nerfed once before. Power Stance Great Spears and Power Stance Straight Swords are also arguably cringe, but Power Stance Spears are the definition of a bottom of the barrel, low brain power, monkey mashing setup. But it wasn't all filthy and self-destructive down there in the world of the Arcane. Bathing in all that blood was quite refreshing. And in my effort to continue to find and appreciate more underused setups, I of course experimented with many things on this Arcane build, as Arcane has a crazy number of things to experiment with. The one thing that I found one with and was impressed with the most was the Occult Morningstar. It's been talked about before, but because the weapon has so many funky things about it, it adds up to quite an impressive instrument. You get solid physical damage on Occult and nice bleed buildup. Two-handing it gives you the hammer hyper armor, and Morningstar also has the very useful running R2 thrust and crouch R1 thrust that gives it some chase down and vortex properties. Mostly I use Poison Mist for the added poison double status proc, but I definitely encourage people to look into the options for this weapon. It wasn't my most winning weapon, but it was the most intriguing. And if the power of the Morningstar in this build tells us anything, it's that there are very powerful and interesting things going on with Arcane builds in Elden Ring. Another fun one is the Ripple weapons. While the sleep halberd is so good that someone might chainsaw you for using it, the axe is a little more fun. Wild Strikes isn't horrible, and you can lube it up with whatever you like for very funny results. Because I like blood so much, obviously, I was using the bleed grease for these invasions. It might not be the king of counter hit damage. It might not have the electrifying potential of dexterity. But Arcane has access to tools from the most memey to the most broken and abusive setups in the game. And with its value against poor connections, I think it has a lot of staying power right now. And don't click away, because naturally I also have a few clips with everyone's favorite weapon, Rivers of Blood. Oh wow, is this thing stupid? Painfully so. The only thing Rivers of Blood doesn't have is really good range, but the Ash of War more than makes up for that. For some reason, it always seems fun to use this against huge PvE noobs, or in particular, when other people use it against me. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more videos on Elden Ring PvP and other great games.